Welcome! You have just tuned in to Awakening the Gift with Psychic Medium Montana Greene, igniting a stream of consciousness within you. Are you ready to feel more comfortable talking about and trusting your own intuition? You can learn to embrace your own natural and subtle abilities. The possibilities are limitless. Hi, I'm Psychic Medium Montana Greene, and together we will look at all of life, yourself, and your fellow living beings through an expanded spiritual lens by examining spirituality, mysticism, and metaphysics. Stay tuned for insights into the human energy field, spiritual principles, and tools on how to care for and utilize these for the highest and greatest good of humanity. Awakening to our spiritual gifts has never been more on time. Awakening to the gift starts now. Hello, everyone. I am Montana Greene, and you are listening to Awakening the Gift on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour and let us ignite a stream of consciousness in you. Each second and fourth Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Time, we will have insightful conversations about spirituality, higher consciousness, and all things metaphysical, helping to ignite a stream of consciousness in you. Today, we will delve into the profound near-death experience of Katy Rose, a modern-day mystic and contemplative. After a traumatic event brought her to the brink of death, Katy entered the light and encountered God, who blessed and healed her energy centers. During this divine encounter, she received a powerful message, and that message was, "Take my heart and give to others what I have given to you." Now, as a subtle body healer, Katy is dedicated to restoring those divine energy systems in others. Join us as we explore her remarkable journey, the insights that she gained, and her mission to share her gift of healing with the world. With a background as a court-appointed special advocate, holistic care provider, and a senior care business owner, she is dedicated to healing and providing spiritual services. She's educated in contemplative psychology at Naropa University, and she has extensively studied the world's religions and is an ordained minister who is active in promoting interfaith harmony through the Parliament of World Religions. She very much believes in transforming personal traumas into brilliant, spiritual brilliance for true healing. Welcome, Katy Rose. How are you?
Well, hello there, Montana, and everyone listening. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So nice to have you with us. Before we got on air, we encountered just a little bit of a snag with the Mercury retrograde that was going on, so we're happy to all be here. Katy, I've really got to thank you so much for your patience in getting online with all of this. But could you tell me just a little bit more about your own background? And what I'm most interested in is what brought you to spirituality?
Oh, okay. Well, I remember even being as a young child in my very early years being connected to spirit because I would have visions and visits from the spirit world. And often I'm talking like 4, 5, 6 years old. I'd be laying in bed going to sleep, and suddenly the room would become very bright with a blue rolling wave of light. And then suddenly I would have spiritual beings appearing to me out of that wave at the foot of my bed, giving me discourse for my future self as an adult.
Wow.
So it began very early when I was young.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I too, much like you, very, very young when I was able to perceive and have so many of those different experiences. But I'm curious, you said something about a wave of blue light. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? That's something I didn't get to experience. I'm so curious about yours.
Oh, okay. Well, it's like an ocean wave, but it's spiritual light, and for me it was blue. It was a crystal blue. It was a gorgeous blue. And when it rolled in as I was falling asleep, I knew that visitors were coming to assist me in my journey through the human life here. It was just loving kindness. It was filled with loving kindness, mercy, and compassion.
Beautiful. Is anyone else in your family also intuitive?
I don't know. I'm not really connected to my family in a personal way, but I do know that intuition has run on both sides of the family and the grandmother's side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how was that for you as a child, having these very profound experiences? I know, like from my own experience, always felt very different, kind of knew that what I was experiencing was not the norm for everyone else. How did you deal with that?
Oh, that's interesting that you ask, because I grew up with 4 brothers. I'm the oldest of 5 children. And they all knew that I had a special gift since I was very young, because I could also predict things that were to come. And I could see spiritual patterns, forming through the human consciousness. And they would call me, my title I was named as being different. And my brothers would say, we know you're different. My parents would say the same, and you're always right. And so when I came through with something and said, listen to me, this is truth, and this is what I see, it always came true. And they learned to listen if I did speak something from the spirit realm.
That's great that you were understood in that way and valued for that. When
It
did you?
was, but it was.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it was, but it was. They were more scared than accepting because they didn't understand it, and I didn't know how to explain it to them.
Explaining it is a very tricky thing, isn't it? When it's something that is so natural for you, it's very difficult to put those kind of things into words. Plus, so many of those spiritual experiences, there's not really language for it. So much of it is communicated through feeling states and through energies that just don't have words that describe them there.
I agree with you. It's for me, it was so natural. I didn't understand why they couldn't see the way I did or experience the way I did. And I thought, this is odd. What's going on here? But I learned, eventually how to express myself in terminology that others could understand. And it was through the process of life and life experiences. But the real key for me was studying contemplative psychology. It gave me the language to bring spirit into a human understanding.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And I see that you went to Naropa. Was that at the Boulder campus?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful. A lot of good things come out of Naropa for sure. So, how old were you when you decided that you wanted to go into that field of psychology and contemplatory studies?
Well, I've always wanted to. My path in life never got me there, when I was younger. But I did study world cultures and sociology and psychology on my own for many years. And I did become a minister at one point. I did study to become a Catholic sister. But
Wow.
I gave all those up. Yeah, I gave all those up. I started at 12 years old studying to become a Catholic sister. And then a minister I started working towards when I was 19. And I did achieve that and served for about 9 years before I retired from that, because my near-death experience taught me so much more. So everything was preparation. And then trying to communicate more of what was happening and reach more people. I asked God and my spiritual guides, what do you want me to do? How do I communicate what you're asking me to do? And I was told to study contemplative psychology. And so that's why I went.
Beautiful. It is so amazing how so much of our life experiences are also part of our spiritual path. I know a lot of people think that when you develop spirituality, you're doing that exclusively in an ashram or exclusively in meditation. But really, every experience is a spiritual experience, but that's great that you were able to find the terminology and the courses that would help you kind of explain that a little bit better to people. It's interesting that you went the Catholic route. Was your family Catholic?
Yes, we grew up strict Irish Catholic. My father's family was from Ireland, and we're from Philadelphia. But I didn't grow up in Philadelphia. But yeah, very Irish.
Gotta love the Irish. I've got plenty of Irish in myself as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to school for 12 years, Catholic school for 12 years. I learned some good stuff, but and I liked the education. But then a priest in 12th grade told me in our religion theory class, he said, your questions are greater than the Catholic religion can answer. It's time for you to move on to greater vistas within the God realm.
That's beautiful that he was
17.
supportive that way. Wow, at 17, that's profound. That's very profound.
It is.
Yeah.
I believe there's gatekeepers of consciousness out there. And when a soul is ready to move beyond the accepted reality into a transformational reality, evolving within themselves, then the gatekeeper shows up and gives you an opportunity to move on.
So would you mind, can we go a little bit into your near-death experience? What were the events leading up to that?
There were a series of events, but it's a lot of unconscionable events that were deep from someone's own psychic wounds, which also involved some mental illness from a traumatic brain injury. But it involved a lot of, how can I say, evil that was working through the consciousness at that time. And it caused an absolute betrayal and loss of everything and everyone I knew in my life. It was like an atomic bomb went off and exploded, and family, friends, and faith were gone. I was on zero ground with just myself and my child, and then had to start over. And it wasn't provoked. This was not provoked. So when people, the human consciousness operates, when it's operating in a perception of loss, there's a separation that occurs.
Yes.
So in an effort to protect the human heart and our intellect, we manifest grieving shadows articulating loss and disconnection. And this is what happened with these individuals. And it was shot out at me, the full force. And they are the precursors of metabolic illness in mind, body, and spirit. So they compromised their integrity as human beings, but it was also a soul choice that we all agreed upon. Right. I don't blame anyone. And so what happened, the shock of what was done knocked my heart out, and I was very healthy. I was picking my son up from second grade, and we were sitting there eating ice cream because I took him for ice cream after school. And suddenly I had this crushing vice-like effect right over my heart. And I said, oh my God, I think I'm having a heart attack. And there was no history for me to even have this. So there was no hospital nearby. So I got my son in the car and I asked the angels and God to protect us both and get me to a hospital. I drove in a heart attack to a hospital, the closest one, which was 30 miles away. And I don't remember the drive. I don't remember the drive at all. I knew somebody came in and took over spiritually. And when we got there, they said that they got me on the table and ministered nitrogen and oxygen and so forth. And they said I wouldn't make it through the night, that something happened in my life. They told me, they said, you're too healthy to be having a heart attack. And I remember I started having another one on the table. My son was 7 and they had him sitting on the table with me. And he said, oh, Mom, I'm not going to lose you. And he popped up on the table, raised his hands, and started moving energy all over my chakra levels or my entire body. And he started humming. And I mean, I wasn't in my body. I was watching him do this. And then he said, Mom, I love you. And it pulled me right back in.
Wow.
And the nurses, their mouths just dropped. They just witnessed a spiritual miracle at that point and a loving kindness. And so they admitted me to the hospital, and I coded again that night. And in the coding, the subtle bodies, just to be clear, the subtle bodies are our thoughts and emotions. If we, my work recognizes that we're all individual souls at a unique spark of God wisdom, and we take on a human consciousness for experience. And it's the wounds of the human consciousness are what cause our conflict. And there's developmental stages. Yes. And there's developmental stages in psychology by Erik Erikson that help you understand what level, pertaining to what chakra level, you are experiencing conflict or unresolved issues. And some of that, here, let me share some of that with you, and then I'll go into the experience.
We've got to take a break really quick. Why don't we jump into that after this break? So we were listening to Awakening the Gift with me, Psychic Medium Montana Greene, and my very special guest today, Katy Rose, modern day mystic. And we're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about those levels of the subtle body and our levels of development. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Today is Katy Rose, modern day mystic, and she is sharing her near-death experience insights and so much more. But before we get going, I want to make sure that everybody knows how to contact Katy and also how to contact myself. If you want to reach me, whether you want to schedule a reading or for anything else, you can do so at my website, which is whisperingleafpsychic.com. And Katy, would you mind sharing what your website is or what your preferred means for the listeners to reach out to you?
Yes, my website is eagleheart.life, L-I-F-E. You can go to my website. My contact information is on it. You may email me or phone me, even text me. My phone is 720-667-7928. Or the email is katyrose.listens@gmail.com, and Katy is K-A-T-Y.
Always have to spell that out. There's a lot of different ways to spell Katy these days. So before we went to break, we were talking more about your near-death experience, and we were getting into a little bit about where in our developmental stages we have conflict. Do you want to get a little bit deeper into that with us, Katy?
Yes, I can do that because this is the work that I do in the healing.
Yes.
Now, some of us that are listening are familiar with the different chakra levels, as well as some may be familiar with the different psychological developmental levels. Now, from Erik Erikson, if you look at both, they kind of work together because we're learning trust as an infant versus mistrust. You know, are our needs being met by our parents or primary caregiver? Can we trust them to love us? And that's the root chakra. And that's where I see a lot happening in conflict, is the root, the sacral, and the solar. And those are the first three levels. The sacral is more about the autonomy versus shame or doubt that the little baby, the toddler, is learning between 18 months and 3 years. And if they're in the shame, if they're learning shame and doubt rather than being autonomous at that age, there could be some conflict that needs to be resolved by the soul voice that I initiate in session. So the solar plexus is more the initiative versus guilt. So taking initiative, it's a preschool age, 3 to 5 years. If something happens that makes you feel guilty during that time, it can cause the conflict. Usually in those first three levels of trust, autonomy, and initiative, or root, sacral, and solar plex, is where a lot of our conflict lies. And it can be resolved through sessions with activating the soul voice to enter the human trauma. Now, the heart chakra is where industry versus inferiority. That's the middle school years, ages 6 to 11. And that's an important one because that's creating our feelings right there. And do we feel inferior with others, or do we feel independent and autonomous and able to take initiative? The throat chakra is the age 12 to 18 years. Those are our teen years. It's identity versus confusion. So the teen years can cause a lot of conflict, a lot of unrest, but yet it can be a great time to really develop who you are to the world. The third eye, intimacy versus isolation. Can we be intimate with our soul voice? Can we be intimate with others? This is age 18 to 40 years. The crown chakra is, I would say, a combination of generativity versus stagnation. That's age 40 to 65 years. You know, is the adult stuck in their dysfunctions or disconnect of who they are or how they want to show up in the world? Or are they creating new paths for themselves and helping others in service? It's also involves the integrity versus despair, which is the stage 8 in the ego development. And it's the older adulthood, 65 to death. So our 7 main chakra levels relate to the 7+1 psychological development stages of Erik Erikson. And when people speak about seeing grieving shadows or some type of shadow in one of your chakra levels, it's because there's something unresolved at some developmental level. And there's no blame on anyone. It's just part of your life journey. And because there's no blame. It's just we're all in it together. We're all learning how to heal ourselves through activating our soul voice, the true voice that can enter into the human consciousness and befriend and companion the unresolved issue or trauma. And this is what happens in session and this is what they taught me in my near-death experience, which I'll go into more in a moment. But you welcome and you companion with it, you listen to why it's there, and then you thank it and give it gratitude and release it into the light. And like a best friend that you're letting go for its own transformation. And because conflict exists because it's protecting your ego. Now you have to have an ego to operate in the human world. And so the soul can come in and heal the human ego where it hurts, its wounds, if you allow it. And that's the self-mastery that we're all working towards.
Yes.
So anyway, to go back to my near-death experience, what happened to me, all my chakras were blown out from the magnitude of the shock. So when I entered the light, it was the first thing I saw was a golden temple. And there were radiant spiritual masters all around. And Archangel Michael, who I consider a great master of the heart and who I've known since I was a child, embraced me as I fatally collapsed in his arms. He held my lifeless body close to his heart, and he leaned over and with great tenderness kissed my cheek. And then he touched my spiritual eye with the pulse of his heart. Archangel Michael then carried me through vast swirling worlds of bright white light along a pulsing artery of sparkling blue sound. There's the blue again that came from my childhood.
And I love that you said blue sound because, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that really struck a chord there, that it's blue sound, that everything is in motion and it's so much more than just colors and they weave.
Yeah, the core of all light is sound. And And that's how light emanates. It emanates from sound. And the spiritual masters, who were very quiet in nature, were appearing to me periodically. And they were studying the subjective, lifeless body of myself. And each visited upon me the gentle mercies of their particular gift, their spirit, as I did gradually awaken into a flush of gentle kindness, flowing, reconnecting my torn subjective tissues in my heart. Then he stood me upright and breathed into me a vast wind of centered purpose. This is Archangel Michael. Mm-hmm. I revived and experienced the synergy of a vast mercy, positioning me in direct observance of an enormous whirlpool of energy. I observed its core to be a living void. I didn't know how else to describe it except it was a living void, pulsing steady sounds of strengthening harmonies, rebuilding the intimacies of my heart, while encouraging me to live and to breathe. Its outer perimeter poured forth thunderous, dynamic waterfalls of sparkling generosity, strengthening my outer form in the regions of the subtle bodies, healing the agony and despair. I surrendered into the primal magnetic resonance of its most precious glory, realizing the cellular realignment occurring distributed itself as the embryonic waves of love and mercy. I did not resist. I felt myself being carried deeper into the core of this most beloved being, transforming me into the heart of its truth. Archangel Michael, who was the guardian of my transformation, reached out and kindly pulled me back, whispering, "No, it's not time. Listen." Then this enormous being of merciful generosity spoke to me. "Take my heart and give to others what I have given to you. Be the direction of your own spirit." And thus my practice was born. When I came back from that experience, I did not know I was a healer. I was still in shock, trying to process everything. And people started healing around me. Wherever I walked, people began to heal. And I had a friend who was a doctor, a medical doctor, and I asked her, I said, "What do you think's happening here?" And she said she was also a cleric. We shared responsibilities together. And she says, you've come back as a healer. People are healing. And I said, you know what? It's the loving kindness. It's the love that I was greeted with on the other side. And it was just flowing through me so intensely that people were healing because of the spiritual love. And it's true loving kindness. And that's what my service is in, loving kindness.
Yeah. That is phenomenal. When the people were healing around you, this was without your conscious intent. It was simply from being in your aura, is essentially what you're saying?
Yes.
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 It is amazing that the depth of loving kindness and what it can do. It can melt the hardest and most rigid of people and truly transform so much. Can you talk just a little bit more about the feeling of that loving kindness? What else did you experience with that?
In the near-death experience or when I came back?
Ongoing.
Well, I came from an extremely traumatic childhood as well. And so my life has been filled with trauma. But I was always on the path of healing. And this NDE experience, it transformed my attention away from the trauma that I was always trying to work my way through into service for others. It was a dramatic change that came over me. Is many of us in the human consciousness, and even not even being aware of it, we focus on our loss so much.
Yes.
Because we're trying to overcome the loss. And it shows up in all our relationships. So what I did when I was younger, before this all started with the NDE, I took a year off from life, from all my friends, from family. I think I was about 19, because I said there's more to life than what I'm experiencing through the trauma of my development years. And I had forgotten about my connection when I was younger because there was so much trauma during the teen years.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, when I took that year of just meditating, I've been meditating for 30 some years, 30 plus years, daily meditation. And so when I took that year off and meditated that entire year at age 19, Spirit began to return to me in a way that I could recognize. My human consciousness was letting go and allowing Spirit to come back in. And what I saw in a vision is I came back clairsentient, clairvoyant, clairaudient in all senses.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw when I was 19, when they reopened the door for me in a vision after a year of meditation, was golden steps leading up to a beautiful door of brilliant colors. And then there was one of my guides is a Tibetan master, and he was at the top, and he was looking at me, pointing to the door, asking me to go through it. And so I did. And when I did, that's when the whole world of Spirit began revealing itself to me again, and the connection that I have. And so it's been a gradual process for my human consciousness to heal and understand and work consciously with the other side again, which I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the NDE experience expanded on that in ways of, how can I say, just the magnitude that it enhanced what the gifts were already was phenomenal. And so basically I live in Spirit, and I look at the human consciousness as necessary to navigate in this world of experience, but also the compassion and the understanding that it developed in me beyond normal compassion for the suffering, human suffering, and what people go through. I remember when I first came back from the light, I was so sensitive that I couldn't be in any rooms with groups of people because I would hear all their crying that's going on inside of them. And it became deafening. And I would hear cries from all over the world. And I would find myself in dreams in different countries, in different political conflicts, helping heal what is happening at some level. It was, and I found myself in many languages in my dreams, in many worlds. And this was not just our world. This was a lot of interstellar worlds too.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. It's more than just this earth realm.
Yeah, it is. We are not the only ones. Yeah. I became a voice, I became one of the voices in the universe, or one of the, my consciousness expanded so that I could live beyond just the human consciousness. I recognize other life forms. And I began to hear the voices. I was always close to nature, but it really expanded, and I can hear the voices of just the least little form of life, or just grass or a flower or a tree, just a little bug. And I won't kill any form of life.
Right.
Even a little bug, I just scoop it up with loving kindness and put it back out on the ground.
Yes. Because it's valuing
life.
it as an additional spark of God. It's not a nuisance. It's a part of this whole living gestalt.
Yeah, and to give you an example of that, like one time I was trying to eat my lunch or whatever it was, and this fly kept buzzing around me. And then it just landed next to me and just like stared at me. I go, are you hungry? And I could feel telepathy, I could sense telepathy, and it was hungry. I said, okay. So I broke a piece of what I was eating and gave it to the fly, and we both sat there and ate together.
Had a nice
little
little
things like
moment there.
that.
Yes.
Yes. And then there was, this is an illustration too. Forgiveness is huge. You
It's
cannot
so
heal unless
paramount.
you forgive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
here's an example of just how important that is. I used to live in Port Townsend, Washington. I used to live up in the Olympic Peninsula. And one night, someone tried to break into my house just for some unknown reason. And I called the police, of course, and the police got there and took the individual to jail. And I had a victim's advocate, and we did go to court. And I didn't know this person. And it was, I think they had, I don't know, they weren't in the right mind. Something had happened, substance abuse, and they thought they were at their house. But anyway, in the courtroom, I asked, and there was people from all over having their cases here in this courtroom with this judge and all these lawyers and victim advocates. And I said to mine, I said, I want to go up and talk to the person that tried to break in. And so they allowed me to do that. The judge did. And I came up there, and this young boy, or young man, I should say, maybe 21, 22, standing in the orange DOC uniform, chained, and he was shaking literally. And I looked at him in front of the whole courtroom. And I mean, I was scared out of my wits when this happened, because I didn't know what it was about. If to be woken up with someone trying to break into your house. Anyway, I said, why did you do this? What happened to you? And it was just compassion coming out of me. And he just shook, and he just began to cry. And I said, you really scared me. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I can see that you're hurting yourself, or you wouldn't have done this. And I said, I want you to know that I do forgive you. I'm not holding this against you. But I ask the judge to give you a program that will empower you, not make you a hardened criminal, because I want
Very
you to
smart.
succeed in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because it doesn't benefit anyone.
Yes. And he began to cry, and the whole courtroom silenced. And the judge said to me, I have never had such a gracious woman in my courtroom. Thank you. And when I turned around and went with my victim advocate back to my seat, there must have been 100 people in that courtroom. They all began to nod their heads and clap one by one. That was an example of loving kindness and forgiveness.
Yes. And that may have been one of the few times. Yes, if we can do that for others more often, that's where societal healing happens. I was just thinking as I was listening to this, that may have been one of the very few times in that young man's life that somebody gave him the benefit of doubt, that saw him and saw his own suffering versus, what you did to me kind of thing.
You're right. And I believe it was God speaking through me to that soul.
Yeah.
And coming back from that near-death experience, I see the patterns, the human suffering, and I only offer kindness and forgiveness wherever it can be received.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's how we have to be if we truly want to experience love. Right. There's a human love and there's a divine love, and we're capable of both.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, on that note, we've got to take a break really quick. So we're going to step away and handle that. And you are listening to Awakening the Gift with me, Psychic Medium Montana Greene, and my very special guest, Katy Rose, modern day mystic. We're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about loving kindness and forgiveness. Stay tuned. Back on Awakening the Gift with me, Psychic Medium Montana Greene, and my special guest, modern day mystic, Katy Rose. And she's sharing more of her insights from her near-death experience and also her insights gained as a human living a very spiritual life. So, Katy, thank you so much for being on the show. Can you tell our listeners one more time how they can reach you?
Yes, my website is eagleheart.life, Life. The name of my practice is called Eagle Heart Wisdom Healing. My phone number is 720-667-7928. You can text me as well. My email is katyroselistens@gmail.com, and Katy is Katy.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, Katy, I'm curious, can you walk us through one of your healing sessions? You are such a wealth of knowledge, not just knowledge, but also experience. What is the healing session with you like? And I know every session has got to be very individualized, but if you could give a rundown.
Sure. It is individualized, and it's totally in the moment with spirit for the best and highest good of the individual. When someone schedules a session, or I used to have greet and meets for people who wanted to meet me first and talk a little bit about it, that were free. And I'd say, okay, if you want to schedule a session, what happens in the next few days before your session, pay attention to life around you and notice what your dreams may be. And because life will begin speaking to you since you've asked for a healing from the Creator. And then I go into contemplation a few days before, and I start asking for their guides as well as my guides to come together in a co-facilitation event for the highest and best outcome for the individual to heal, whatever God wants to heal in them. And I usually find out what the core issue is in this spiritual meditation. And when we get to session, we talk a little bit first and say, hey, how the past few days go, what were your dreams like? And then after they're done talking, then I share what was given to me and ask if it resonates with them. And everyone has said yes. And some of it was pretty difficult to swallow, but it's about healing, and there's honesty and authenticity in this too.
Yeah.
And then we go, okay, and I can feel the guides coming in because I bless the space as well and invite the guides in. And then I just ask them to breathe and go into a quiet meditation with me. Then Spirit gives me the visuals to share with them. And often they'll be asked to go in and receive a gift from one of their guides that has a message about a situation. So it's about empowering them to find their own messages and navigate through their own trauma or unresolved issues. But I'm like a facilitator, guiding them through the process as Spirit directs me. And they are the ones getting the answers. And they can speak, they can speak and say, hey, this is happening. I need more understanding here, because it's a very give and take. It's very flexible, very relaxed, very calm, very safe. And then we go in and companion with what is the disturbance, maybe the conflict, and we welcome it, and then ask, what is its message? Why are you here? And often the individual gets the message and understands why it's there. And then we might have a little picnic or tea and biscuits with it around a campfire, along with the guides and a visual, and just kind of converse with that state of consciousness living within them through the help of, because I'm holding space in the light from where I was in the light. That's my part of the journey with the client. And they have a conversation, they get to understand and know that part of themselves a little better. And then, and they listen. It's really important to listen to when it speaks to them. Then you thank it and offer gratitude, and I'm guiding them through this as Spirit's directing me. And then they release it into the light for its own freedom and transformation, because it's served its purpose and it's okay to release now. And then there's a welcomeness and there's a forgiveness in the process that is so important, because often there's old hidden traumas that were stored in the subconscious and the unconscious mind that come up in session.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very safe. It's emotionally safe. And people cry a lot when they're releasing. So I always have tissues, and that's good. It's
It is
healing to
good.
cry
Crying
and
is
let it
good. It
go.
is a release. Yeah.
And often people come out of it, and you could see the change in them physically because they have released a tremendous burden from their inner world, and the light is turned back on, and they can feel the rush of energy moving through their body again, and they can see, they have more clarity, more understanding. Some say it's not trying to get through it anymore or a way around it. It's just they recognize the journey and they know how to navigate with it now.
Yes.
And it's not a one-time fix-all either. It's
right.
Everyone's individual. It's not a long-term therapy. It's not that. You know, therapy is mind working with mind. This is soul working with mind, the work that I do. And both are good depending on the situation, because therapy is important in some instances. And then when they get to establish a certain baseline of functionality, and they want a little bit more integration, then they can come to this healing, because this is the soul healing the mind.
Mm-hmm. And it's so important to get to that soul level, because you can do a lot of talking, you do a lot of healing mind to mind, but the soul is still there and it still needs its matters resolved. Would you say, on the topic of forgiveness, because people go through some pretty rough things, has it been fairly easy for people to obtain a certain level of forgiveness within a session, even for the most heinous of acts that have been perpetrated against them?
Yes, what they feel is emotional peace. When they're working within the light, within themselves through these sessions, they're able to let go of that hard, fast anger and grief that surrounds. And because in session, they begin to understand the other person's presence of mind and why it happened or how they're connected in that experience. So they're thinking outside of themselves, and they're actually having beingness outside of themselves. So they're looking at the scenario as a soul consciousness, not a human person being hurt. And it brings more understanding. And it may take some time for it to fully integrate. Usually, after a session, I say, be kind to yourself. Don't do anything that is like too hard for you at this point, because you need to integrate what just happened for you. And I usually recommend at least 3 days of being soft with yourself and just paying attention to how things are changing around you, because your world will shift after a session, and it will shift for the better. And people will notice, because several people have commented that their friends recognize there's been a change for the good in them. But the forgiveness is the key to all healing.
Forgiveness is the key to all healing. Forgiveness truly is the key to all healing.
Yeah, and if they have trouble in session with forgiveness, we just work on it until they're comfortable with letting go. And it's very soft, very gentle, and they have spiritual help from their guides as well as mine. And people do let go. They're able to let go.
So you had said something with your clients. You recommend that they pay attention to their dreams and things that have been going on in their lives ahead of a session. Can I ask you, was there anything going on in your life preceding your near-death experience? Looking back, was there anything that stood out?
There was a lot of trauma, and it wasn't provoked. It was crazy insanity. I actually had to get an attorney involved, and the attorney said that the people I loved and trusted were acting within the psychosis of Hitler against me. And so that's the magnitude of what happened. In my book that I'm writing, I will go into more detail. I am writing a book about the whole experience and the near-death experience that accompanied and changed and transformed my life into a greater service for everyone. But yeah, I was observing, seeing all this happening around me, thinking, why is this happening? It's pure insanity. Nothing makes sense. And I guess my subtle body systems just couldn't process anymore and blew out, and I had the heart attack.
The overwhelm of the whole situation. There is such a buildup of energy in those intense, hostile situations, and it's got to come out somewhere. And it sounded like for you, it came out through the heart attack, and various other energetic modalities.
Yeah, that's what happened, and it was just an overwhelm of insanity that blew out my heart.
Yeah.
And they called it, the doctors, it's known medically now, but back then when it happened, it was new science, but they call it the broken heart syndrome.
So there was they've got a name for it, yeah.
Yep, it was nothing physically wrong with my heart. I was in good health. And so they called it the broken heart syndrome, which it was. I had a broken heart of great magnitude.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you've been able to heal through that, and more than that, to be able to help so many other people with exactly the same thing, healing a very old trauma, new trauma, and finding that place of forgiveness through that unconditional love that is truly accessible to us at all times.
Thank you. And yes, and I would like to offer just a few words here to let people try this for themselves. If I can, it's just a thought for people to try in their private moments. If you take a moment and still your thoughts, be mindful, still your thoughts, recognize that that your thoughts and feelings are not you. It's just a river current moving through you from your own experiences and possibly the connection you have with others. And you go into a quiet contemplation with the divine. And you can take some breaths to help you get there. And deep belly breaths, or I recommend at least 3 of them.
Nice.
Ask yourself, when you're in that quiet place, if I were to touch the face of God, what would my experience be? How would touching the face of God help me? And then just listen and observe.
And just let the information come through in whatever means that it will. That's a beautiful piece of advice for everyone. I hope that everyone takes advantage of that and has those quiet times where they have those contemplative experiences.
Yeah, so do I, because it will make a difference significantly in your life if you're willing to do that. And it could be out in nature, it could be in a chair, it could be in a walk. There's all different kinds of meditation, quietness, and stillness. It could even be while you're cooking, or doing dishes. It's whatever works for you, but get into that quiet place and just listen to what it feels. I'm saying this now, listen to what it feels like to touch the face of God, and how would that change your life?
And remembering that you can do that at any time. Just having intention truly does make that link. It's like dialing it up on the phone. So holding that intention opens up those pathways, and then you can feel for what it sounds like, feels like, emotes as. Katy, thank you so very much for joining us today. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and of course, learned so much about your experience and how that can be helpful to so many others. Tell me more. When is your book looking to be finished? I know that those can be a very, very long process.
It'll probably be in another year or 2. I'm still working on a lot of the content. Some of the content is living content that's occurring right now. But a large part of it has been written. So I'm anticipating within 2 years it should be out.
Great. Well, I look forward to reading that for sure. And I want to thank you so much, Katy, for joining us today of Eagle Heart Wisdom and for sharing all of the wisdom and experiences that you have there. And of course, I want to thank you, the listening audience, for tuning in to Awakening the Gift with me, Psychic Medium Montana Greene. And as always, I truly enjoyed our time. Please tune in every second and fourth Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time. And next time on Awakening the Gift, we will explore the topic of signs and synchronicities with spiritual teacher Charmaine Jackson. Everybody have a fantastic week. Katy, thank you so much for joining in, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks. You have been listening to Awakening the Gift with Psychic Medium Montana Greene, igniting a stream of consciousness within you. To find out more of what is needed to shift your consciousness above the ordinary, tune in to Transformation Talk Radio every second and fourth Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific. Each show we examine spirituality, mysticism, and metaphysics, along with the tools to help us achieve our life's missions. To connect with me, visit whisperingleafpsychic.com.